Bill Laney, what are you thinking about today? What are we going to talk about?
Well, we were going to talk about self-care,
Hmm.
self-love. I'm aware that when most people think of love, just in general, they're thinking of a feeling or a sensation. But in
Mm.
actuality, love, when you couple it with self-care, it begins to, it's really an action. It's what you do to take care of yourself.
I love that you started out with most people think of love as a feeling. I think that that was brilliant, actually, to tell you the truth. I like that distinction, or at least the more comprehensive, exploration or unpacking of love, that although it may be a feeling, right, that it's also an action, if you
It's
will,
an
or
action.
a certain standard that you hold for yourself. If somebody is loving themselves, don't they have their own back? And isn't that really what we're here to do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. If you were going to unpack the connection between self-love and self-care, how would you do that? I mean, how would you start? How do you make that connection? What's the bridge between self-love and self-care?
Well, we've talked before about a supportive environment. I think that's one of the most important things. If we are with people, with a community, with friends who will support your higher aspirations,
Mm.
will support you as a person and where you want to go, and will help facilitate you're moving in a forward direction toward in a more supportive direction. That's how I see that working.
I gotta tell you, I really, really appreciate that, because you went right to the jugular for me, in that you defined what supportive environment really is. And I think that that was really nice. So thank you for that. And so self-love would be what? Like finding these environments and putting yourself in them, creating these environments, what do you
Yes,
think?
all of that, all of that. Finding the environment, creating the environment if you need to and want to, and if that is a further expression of that self-love, which I think it is, then yeah, all of those things are very positive.
I'm going to add that I think what's really important, what most people actually forget, is the aspect of health and the role that health plays in all of this, and the importance for people to really have their own definition of health and what is health. And I think that we have to synthesize a more enlightened, if you will, or a more, what's a good word, Bill, that we talk about, like refined? Is that a good word? That talks about the more sophisticated, more of a higher understanding, if you will, of what health is.
Yeah, that's good. I'm reminded of conversations we've had in the past. And in fact, a question that you ask a number of people that uh, how you express your own state of health,
Mhm.
and if you and in a percentage, for instance, and if you feel that you are as healthy as you can be, if you are totally healthy, and of course that harkens back to the idea of health being unconditional.
There you
And
go.
yeah, and the fact that if you're healthy, uh, even if you are quote unquote sick, if to use that word, uh, you are as healthy as you can possibly be at any given moment, given that all of the challenges that you've experienced. So
Absolutely.
health, yes, health is an unconditional term. I mean, we are always healthy,
Well, that's what I
and
think makes my work, like the quote unquote the psychotechnologies, is that we understand that
yes,
health is unconditional. And that's a really challenging perspective for a lot of people to adopt, because they're so
yes,
used to thinking that if something is happening, that they are able to easily judge as bad, or that there's something wrong with them because they're manifesting something, rather than it's showing up on purpose. We all have calls to answer. There's nothing broken. There are no problems, just calls to answer. And I think that that's a big part of this, if you will, this like tunnel vision that people have regarding health. I think that they have a very, very narrow minded viewpoint of what is and what isn't health. And can you imagine
yes.
began with the understanding that all expressions are expressions of health, that health is unconditional. Is that a game changer, or is that fodder? Is that wishful thinking, or is that like some kind of foolish philosophy? And that's a really important unpacking for people to consider, because we are being raised with this one size fits all paradigm regarding health, as opposed to the health paradigm, which says all expressions are expressions of health. What you call sickness, I would say they're symptoms, but they're symptoms of health,
Yeah.
not
Yes.
symptoms of
Yes.
ill health, but we are calling them ill health. And I think that
We
that's a
use that term. Yes.
right. Well, that's a big term. It truly is. And the part that I really felt packing to share today, that I really had, was that holistic health is a repetitive term. It's redundant. Like, if it truly is health, it's going to be holistic. And if there's one thing that I was kind of attached to sharing, it was that. It was the understanding that health is holistic or it's not health. So if you're looking at health
Exactly.
through one lens, then what kind of plasticity could you have if you're seeing health as being rigid, that it's only this and only this, and that, or I've got to use this discipline in order to quote unquote regain my health, as if it's even possible to lose your health, but you're drinking the Kool-Aid that you have lost your health. And how convenient for that one discipline that this is the only thing you can do to regain your health, as opposed to, hey, all expressions, all symptoms, all manifestations are perfect given the sets of circumstances that preceded it, and helping people really have a greater definition of health, if you will, or success, and to make it personal. I mean, to really do the unpacking and to understand that you probably have a degree of Kool-Aid that you're drinking regarding what is health. But if you really want health, you're going to want to expand that definition and want to look at holistic health is a repetitive term, and that if you are healthy, you are seeing things holistically. I guess the big thing is you're not going, I'm not going to eat well because I had a good night's sleep, right? Or I don't need a good night's sleep because I exercised today. Or I have a positive mental attitude, so I don't have to worry about going to the gym. I mean, it's just so interesting how we recognize that healthy practices beget healthy practices. And one of the greatest healthy practices that we have is our ability to be new and to see things in new ways with new eyes, and how important that is for plasticity to have an ever expanding definition of what is health, what is success, who are you, and what gives meaning to your life, and having a very, very dynamic, open-ended, variable, novel idea about what these definitions are. You know what I'm saying? And to be brave
Yes.
enough to have those definitions and to come outside of this one size fits all, that no, health is this and this alone. And it's like, oh, so you don't have to eat well because you exercise today. There's only one component to health and you own it, and this is it. And there's nothing else you need to do. And it's like, no, health is holistic, especially if you're going to honor the sovereign of the individual, the uniqueness of an individual, which is the
Yes.
optimal expression of an individual, is to be brave and bold and have a definition of health or an expression of health that no one else has had. And to really self-love would be, in this case, having your own back and not throwing yourself under the bus because your expression of health is unconditionally healthy, not your expression of health is, oh, Houston, we have a problem here, which is a form of creating a curse. It's like almost like you're casting a spell, and you're making something that's unconditional or organic, you're making it bad, or you're seeing it as bad, or you're embracing it as bad. And what's the effect that that has on your overall health? And how self-loving is that? Is that self-care to be able to go and say it honestly because it's true for you, because you're drinking the Kool-Aid? Houston, we have a problem here. Oh no,
Right.
this doesn't
Right.
feel good. And because it doesn't feel good, I can take that great leap and tell you unequivocally, this is bad. And it's like, uh-oh. I think that's where we need a psychotechnology like the health paradigm that says all symptoms are symptoms of health, because then that allows you to create the purpose and the meaning for those symptoms, to sanctify it, to exalt it, to bring it to its highest place. And I don't see people doing that as a practice, at least not organically anyway.
No, no, they don't. And if you regard all symptoms as being calls to answer, then that sets it up right there so that you can take action to go to a higher place with it.
I think you're hitting it. The action that you're taking would be empowering because you have calls to
Yes,
answer, like this is happening for me, not to me, as opposed to
yes.
the action you're taking is victimizing. It's like, well, I'm behind the eight ball, so I got to get my ass in gear. And it's like, which one is going to bring you a better result? The one that says, no matter how true it is, because it's true. I'm not saying this is like fodder or tomfoolery to say, oh, Houston, we have a problem here. The real problem here is that that is true, but is that the totality of truth? And if you're adopting that truth as opposed to other truths, how is your outcome? So if you could say, in addition to Houston, we have a problem here. Hey, this is happening for me. This is happening for a reason.
Mhm,
Let me sanctify it. Let me
mhm.
exalt it. Let me come up with the greatest purpose, reason for being, the greatest story as to why this is happening and how it's supporting me. And you start doing that. Now you're actually participating in your unconditional health rather than participating in, oh, I am conditionally broken, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I think that's a big part. So,
Well, yeah, it really is. It really is. It's that moving forward supportively and regarding challenges in life as calls to answer, and there, as you say, it's there for you, not to you.
what do you think are some of the greatest deficiencies as symptoms of natural consequence for people being unaware that health is unconditional and things like that? What's your greatest sense? Like, how does that manifest quite often in people?
I would say basically being in a negative state of mind
Mm.
uh, would be one way to look at that. Again, feeling that something is happening to them and being reactive around that, being reactive uh, in a negative sense and feeling victimized. Um, if you feel that something is happening for you rather than to you, you can welcome it and welcome it and feel that it is a prompt or a suggestion to do better.
Well,
To
that welcoming it actually allows you to address it optimally instead of suboptimally, where you think that you're negative, as you say, or you're having a
yeah,
problem, actually voluntarily puts you behind the eight ball. And again, it's not to say that perspective wise, it isn't a problem, right? Or that you couldn't see it or view it as a problem. It's just
yeah,
like, how wise is it to see it only as a problem? I mean, if it's more empowering to see it
absolutely.
as it happening for you, not to you, then we owe it to ourselves as self-love and self-care to actually see it as purposeful and meaningful, and it has a reason for being. And if we can tell a greater story regarding what that reason is, wow, think about that, because now we've just turned us from previously sick or malfunctioning or broken to somebody who's going, wow, I really am unconditionally well. And what does that do? Psychically, energetically, emotionally, physiologically, neurologically to the body, to know unequivocally, wow, no, this is all happening for a reason and I am unconditionally healthy. Wow, what a game changer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what's the role that Thriveapeutics plays in all of this, the way you see it?
Well, we all want to thrive, um, but most people don't really have a concept of what that is. They think of things if something happens to them or if their body is out of sorts, they feel like getting some kind of therapy perhaps to make them feel better. But if we can regard ourselves as a thriving individual at all times, then then we can, again, it goes right back. I mean, thriveapeutics, being in a thriveapeutic sense, goes back to what we've been talking to this session about moving in a supportive way or moving in a forward direction. It is all a matter of regarding ourselves and defining ourselves and understanding ourselves as thriving in this life rather than being challenged in some way. I mean, challenges are fine because we all have challenges. challenges are fine if you're prepared to accept a challenge as a call to answer rather than something that's done to you that is a negative thing. So being able to thrive and being able to regard myself or oneself as thriving is a mindset that you can adopt that will always set you up to succeed and to search for and find positive moving solutions to any kind of challenge that you have in life.
Well, I think the biggest positive solution would be to begin with the concept, if you will. You could say assumption, but that seems foolish. But to just choose the concept that I can thrive independent of what my symptoms are, that thriving isn't
Yes,
a prejudiced idea. Like I don't have to have a prejudice, a pre-existing definition of what is thriving. And if I'm not hitting that definition of thriving, then I am not thriving. So in that case, you can't thrive when you're experiencing healthy symptoms, which all symptoms are healthy, right? You
correct.
start to
Yeah.
compromise your own ability to thrive because you're voluntarily participating in the Houston, we have a problem here. And so
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thriving is to be able to go that I can do this unconditionally. I can thrive if I have cancer. I can thrive if I have a broken leg. I can thrive if I'm blind. I can thrive if I am broken up with my spouse. I can thrive if I lost my job. It's not like, how can I thrive under these horrible situations? Well, now you're
right,
setting it up again
right,
to allow it to be
right.
conditional and think about how we cannot control everything, most things, and how we set ourselves up to like withhold our ability to thrive because the conditions haven't been met, rather than having an open-ended, infinite definition of what is thriving and go, no, I'm going to thrive with a broken leg. I'm going to thrive while I am in this state of depression. I'm going to do
Exactly,
this like
exactly.
being grateful for something. I'm going to be grateful for this frustration. And my whole line, if you're really grateful for your frustration, are you frustrated or are you grateful? Really, which one is it?
Yeah,
So, and so if you're thriving during a quote unquote previously thought of negative time, are you really in a negative time or are you thriving? So I think that's the reason why the psychotechnologies that I've created are so very, very important. It's so very vital to how well the work works. I mean, the work works because of the psychotechnologies, and it's so non-negotiable in the way that these things are unconditional from a Thriveapeutic perspective. Now, I understand that we can translate this into therapy, and if you're going to translate this stuff into a therapeutic perspective, that indeed we have a problem, and I'm okay with that. I think that there are times when we absolutely do have problems, and it's probably wise to be dialed to that station that we have problems. But it's also pretty wise to also dial to the station like, well, if this is happening for me and not to me, does that change the way I address this so-called problem? And unequivocally, that answer is yes. And it's been
yes,
yes. Now,
yes,
not to say that the powers that be who really thrive over you being broken and using exclusively therapeutic modalities wouldn't like argue this or find this as a threat or attack the don't attack me, right? I'm just a piano player, right? you know but the reality is that we are deficient in Thriveapeutic practices. We're deficient in having a Thriveapeutic mindset or a health paradigm, and it makes such a difference you cannot believe, because we're that powerful. And so if you get people to participate in these ideas, in these concepts, as you know, they cease becoming just ideas and concepts and they become
right,
amazing sources of support. And I think that's
exactly.
a big component to all of this.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I frequently think back at what you say about you can have concepts, but when you put them into use, when you use those concepts, they become fantastic sources of support. I always thought that was really,
Well, it's true.
really, and it tells us why we need to take action. Again, going all the way back to self-care, self-love. I mean, this is all of a kind.
Let me give that to you because I think that I appreciate you highlighting that. But I think the real important word is in all of this is when I present it, I go, hey, look, I just want you to know these are just concepts. That's all.
Right.
I don't want to propose these as truths, but there are some phenomena that we're playing with here. Okay. And one of the phenomena that I've observed in offering these concepts is that even though, yes, these are just ideas, these are just paradigms, these are just concepts, they're not what the scientific community would like to validate or corroborate as truths, which doesn't make them any less, by the way, supportive, doesn't have any less utility. As a matter of fact, it may have even a greater utility because of the fact that these are quote unquote just concepts, except when you begin to unpack them, interact with them,
Yeah.
participate in them, explore them, investigate them, use them. I think the word is participate in them. The minute you start to play with them, interact with them, have a relationship with them, in that moment, even though these are just concepts, they cease being just concepts and they also now become incredible sources of support. And I believe that to be one of the most empowering ideas on the planet, that these don't have to be truths, they can just be concepts. And you playing and participating in these concepts is enough for you to get the benefit, which is what? Greater functionality. You're more optimal as you're functioning because you're not psychically calling yourself broken, putting yourself in a victim-y place. You're putting yourself in an empowered place, which allows you to handle whatever things you're facing like a boss.
Uh, I think that's great the way you refined the definition of those concepts as opposed to concepts that you put into use there.
Cool.
I think that's really nice.
Cool. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
is there any final comments you want to make? I was thinking like trying to keep this thing as short as possible just for ease of viewership, of watching. And
Yeah.
is there anything that you want to add or anything you'd like to say? Is there anything you want to reiterate?
We all uh, can think idly about doing something, about taking some action, and that's what these just concepts is. And but once you step in there and really take action and begin to use those concepts, that's that's the most brilliant part of all. That's when you really begin to understand what all of this works about is about, and particularly Thriveapeutics. That's when you begin to really participate in the Thriveapeutic model.
Wow. In closing, what I want to say is then you realize not only how powerful this work is, but how powerful you are in the fact that you can have such results by participating in these concepts. And you are
Yes,
that powerful. It's like life changing when you start participating in these concepts versus participating in what you organically or usually do.
exactly.
Well,
Brilliant.
Bill, thank you very much for this. I appreciated this, and we'll do this again. And I think that's a wrap. Thank you.
Okay. Enjoyed
Till
it.
yeah, till next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Take care.